If you go to like an Uber ride or something and you tell your Uber driver, especially you ask them, how long have you been in Atlanta? And a few of them have only been here for like a year. But if they've been here for 10 years, if they've been here for all of their life, uh, you can tell them the city is changing. And it's super interesting because everybody has their own answer to that question. When you talk about a physical, visible reality, is something nobody can deny. Everybody knows that the buildings are changing, the people are changing, the price of living is definitely changing. What's a more interesting conversation is, how is it changing? Why is it changing? What are they getting out of changing it? And really, these kind of questions really give us, it changes our perspective from the perspective of somebody that's just living through history and putting up with it, to being able to make intelligent decisions about it and be able to make intelligent moves about it and know realistically about what we can do about it this year, next year, time in the future. So I want to talk about exactly that. And if I can talk about this subject for a few minutes, I'll do my best. The rent is too damn high in Atlanta. Your rent has gone up 35 to 40% since the pandemic started. All across Atlanta and in every county. I can really talk for myself as somebody that lives in Fulton County and was brought up there. I'm from Bankhead, Atlanta. Cost of living's gone through the roof. And the people that live here are demoralized. It's in a big financial island where there's just no access to everything. And Fulton County's got one of the biggest eviction rates in the whole United States. 800 people who rent here are evicted each week. You can just check this out at the magistrate court, really. And over the course of the year, it's like 20% of the people who rent. It's 109 people every day. And if you are not literally getting evicted, you're sweating getting evicted. You're swinging from week to week and month to month. How am I going to get through the next month? And what happens afterwards? And when you try to move in somewhere, it's even harder because they start looking at your past. And you've got to have 3 times the income and 3 signed documents. And by the way, keep that 3 times number intact because we'll come back to that. There's literally nowhere to live inside the perimeter. And even if you go to a homeless shelter and you look at how this crisis is spilling out into the streets, if you watch cable news, you will have a very wild and unrealistic idea of what's going on. They actually did a survey at homeless shelters, and 53% of those people have jobs. So when you hear these arguments in the news, in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on 25/11/46, and they're talking about how people don't work, or the jobs do not pay you enough money to even pay rent inside of the city. And what you hear in a lot of those situations, why aren't you using one of these programs that are out there? And these city programs are really just their way of telling you to go away. There's so many loopholes. There's so many runarounds. They have these housing vouchers in the state of Georgia, and they had 13,000 slots. And of course, 175,000 people applied for them. That is according to the state of Georgia. They have a Department of Community Affairs that they send people to. And in fact, I can give you the exact number. I'm looking at it right now. 177,443. And usually it's on a wait list that you can't even get onto. You don't even have access to. So, people treat these programs like a go away button, because if you ever interface with it and really go through it, that's really what it is. And like, I could definitely hit you with the numbers on who can afford an apartment in Atlanta, and it's less than 40%. I could talk to you about, who can pay for anywhere to live on minimum wage in Georgia, 0%, right? But also, like, go on Craigslist and look around. Look at how much it costs to live somewhere in any neighborhood, and if you're an average person, it boggles your eyes, it boggles your mind, because it's really incredible. So when somebody says, okay, the city's changing, that's the long answer. That's what it actually means. But from a practical perspective, it really means you're moving a lot. You're going from place to place, you make a little money, the landlord raises the rent, and you're looking for somewhere new. It really, on God, how are these landlords going to fix anything? Because most of their money comes from the rent that people are paying them. So this ends up with rotted out porches, bad electricity, mold in the ceilings. It's all kinds of stuff like that that goes down just in any apartment complex. Talk to somebody that lives in one, and you already know what it is. A lot of this is stuff I don't really have to convince anybody of because you're living it. But I do want you to be educated about how and why this happened and what you should be doing next. What are some things that you can realistically do in Atlanta to combat rent prices, rent rates, all this stuff? First of all, I told you I'd come back to that 30% mark. I looked at something from the Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative. Did y'all know that white families in Atlanta have a median household income of 85 grand, which is 3 times black families at 28? And when you look at like beyond income and you go into like money plus investments and stuff like that, it's a lot more. Who has 3 times their rent if they're listening to this? And on God, these guys don't fix anything. These landlords, if you live in any kind of complex in Atlanta, if you live, especially in Southside, anywhere, messed up ceilings, mold, busted appliances, rotten out porch, and they mess with the security deposit and raise the rent on you if you complain. And you can make more than you did last year. You know, you work a job, and even if you are lucky enough to get that raise, the rent's going up as soon as they can, because for like your house is a money-making scheme to these guys. Who does this make money for? It doesn't really make money for the state. These evictions cost money. If you have to be, these shelters cost money. Emergency room visits cost money. Hospitalizations cost money. When somebody is like either housing insecure or living on the streets, or they're couch surfing, or they're going back and forth, or it's so many different categories for that kind of situation, right? They just passed a bill in Georgia this year talking about requiring landlords to make the rental area fit for human habitability. This just passed this year. Georgia is one of just the worst states when it comes to just anybody's rights if you are renting. It's because most of these people who are making laws are also in on the scam. A bunch of the people in the Georgia state legislature are landlords. And this wasn't no accident. This wasn't an act of destiny in Atlanta. These are not accidental problems. These are not natural problems that come with a growing city. There's plenty of cities out here that don't have these problems. So what's happening? It's city priorities, it's city choices. Whether it's the laws at the state level, or whether it's these people on the city council and at the mayor's office, and they have just long priorities. And those priorities are about how they can make money during their term over how can they respect the people that live here. How can they make it so that you can work and not be anxious about where you live. And it's not accidental that so many people are anxious about where they live. If there's only one thing I can lay in for you, that might be the number one thing. This should just be a human right. This shouldn't even exist in society for you to feel anxiety about your housing situation so that you can accept less at your job, be worried about either your boss kicking you to your landlord or your landlord kicking you to your boss. Right now, there's no cap on how much tenants can be charged in rent. There's no rent control. There's no limitation on how much the rent can be increased, or when it can be increased, or how often. There are 50 states, 37 of them explicitly ban rent control, which means that if you live inside the city, you know, the city might want that policy, but on the state level, it's blocked, which is why we're talking about both the local and tying it to what's going on at the state. How did this happen? Well, how does anything happen in the government? Lobbying, right? Organization. All of the landlords get together and put together a presentation, and they demand how they want things to be, and the lawmakers agree with them. What's the root cause? The rich are gaining wealth, profit, power from exploiting people who either don't know better or don't have the time and ability to do anything about it. Our housing system is one of the clearest, most obvious expressions of racial capitalism in the United States. It's not the only one. And it impacts how our city makes infrastructure, how we make investments, where people can access food, how people get paid. And when we talk about, like, all of these things connect, whether it's like when you start unraveling, well, how do we solve this problem? Your rent connects to your working situation, which connects to your representation, which connects to your ability to organize, which connects to police violence, which connects to internationalism and what we see abroad, because the tactics that are used to oppress and control people here in Atlanta, which not only is one of the cities with the highest eviction rate, it's also one of the most militarized cities. You know, it's one of the most surveilled cities, and it provides the framework for how decisions get made and who gets to make those decisions. And you can see this with stuff like Stop Cop City, you know, just like sequences of BS meetings that don't go anywhere. You know, public meetings that are at the middle of the day. You got, if you want to call in, you know, to the city council, you got to call at 2 in the afternoon or some such nonsense. Agendas not posted in advance. Anything where these people might have to, like, hear an earful from a person that might be affected, they try to make it as hard as possible. And in those situations where a bunch of people do get together, they just ignore it. You've seen, you know, these city council, when they have these Stop Cop City protests, and they have some sort of public comment section, and they line up all, you know, you gotta stand outside all day. You know, you gotta stand outside all damn day in order to talk for 2 minutes and go, shame on you. Oh, this is wrong. And they have to sit there politely as legally obligated, and then they go do what they wanted to do anyway. Calling city council like that's gonna do something, marching around like that's gonna do something. And, you know, 100 people can call, hundreds of people can call, but really, if somebody hits those right boxes, it's back to square one. So I want to talk about some official and unofficial things that I think, like, we can all realistically do. All right, first of all, like, I really want people to leave this video and take away, you might not have the institutional strength yet to beat the real estate lobby in Georgia, but you can pressure an individual landlord if there's somebody that's in a bad position. Reach out to those people and, like, talk to people online, talk to people in your local neighborhood. If somebody's dealing with a problem with, like, their rent rate or their situation in terms of, like, quality of living, you know, that ratty porch, that moldy ceiling, any of these kind of situations where like there's an individual that's really going through it, reach out to the people around you. Make it a group thing. A lot of the time, your average landlord isn't the millennial housing group. And in fact, most of their source of income comes from the person that they're renting to. It's also on an individual level, fight the case. These courts are already bogged down with eviction cases. Really tell the people that you know to fight in court. And most people don't do that at all because they don't even know what their rights are. They don't contest the eviction. And even just going through the court system can give you extra time, can give you legal resources, can give you a lot of tools. You can also support tenants unions. It's very tough to do. For tenants to have a meeting in person about how they're treated, especially if you live in something like an apartment complex. A tenant union can be much more effective than an individual that comes in and they really count on knowing that an individual renter that's in a bad situation, you go through a whole story arc with those people. You come in and you come out, right? And the landlord takes advantage of that, knowing that, man, once you're out of the complex, they don't have to deal with you or think about you anymore. If there's a standing group that's there, those problems evaporate almost immediately. And really, if you're really committed to this, prepare yourself for the next years. Prepare yourself for the next decades. Put some of your energy into like being in the action for years, like multiple election cycles. I really want to start conversations about housing and having a platform so that when people start running for office, before they start making these promises to people, because it's really the only time that the political class has any interaction with the average person. They're really mostly worried about raising money and then getting away with what they can get away with once they're in. Meet other people that care about this issue, because there's so many in the city, and like the amount of people who have to pay rent and are outraged by the rent rates. And when you say the rent is too damn high, they know that to be a fact. It's everywhere. You can talk about this with anybody in the whole city. And unless they're literally making money off of rent payments, they know what the deal is. You can go to mosaicatlanta.org, sign our petition, and it's going to keep you up to date with just housing fights in Atlanta. When we find a good target, we'll let you know. And find people who are working on this. It's happening all around the city. There's resistance to this. Is happening all around you. So tap into it, even if it's to spend 5 minutes a month. Talk to 2 people. Set the bar as low as you can. This is a topic where people will see it and care about it and engage with it. So if you've been nodding your head along to all of this, please go to mosaicatlanta.org, sign the petition, and just be a part of our communication on this. Learn more, share more, and yeah.